Freedom Foundation. I'm here with Dustin Hurst, Vice President of the Idaho Freedom Foundation. You've gotten used. See, there you go. You said howdy. We're good. You've gotten used to Dustin being here the last couple of episodes of Steph Lucas Live. We're going to have another special guest tonight. That's going to be Anna Miller from the Idaho Freedom Foundation. Very excited to talk to her about the work she's been doing with the Idaho Freedom Foundation as far as education goes. And we'll get to that in just a bit. But before Anna comes on, Dustin and I have been talking about a few things we should probably go over. Now, while everyone is kind of reeling from Joe Biden's press conference today, let's get back to Idaho. Big topic on everyone's minds that we are going to keep talking about with the Idaho Freedom Foundation in this legislative session is tax relief. Yesterday, House floor discussion over this proposed tax relief bill that would drop about a whole 0.5% from corporate income tax as well as individual income tax. Now, Governor Brad Little is really promoting this. He has a press release today that came out about an hour before Joe Biden's press conference, kind of letting everyone know that he's not like Joe Biden. He's confident about his spending plan for the state and rah-rah tax plan, essentially. So very well timed on the governor's part, but let's talk about this tax relief bill. Dustin, what do you have to say about it?
So there's nothing really new to say about it, other than it is. I would suppose that calling Brad Little's spending plan is accurate because obviously he does outlay his plans for spending for the next year, but
it's not a budget plan; it's a spending plan.
But yeah, there is a lot of spending. We're gonna we saw in his State of the State address last week that he's gonna spend on this, he's gonna spend on that, and that, and that. And that is it's like that Oprah show. You get $1 million, you get $1 million, you get 10 million, right? That's how it is. That's how it was.
And you get historic tax relief, which means, I don't think it's historic.
It might be the biggest. I don't even know. I really don't. But it's funny because I said last week on the show that the whole point of this was to give tax relief to people that deserve it. I mean, we always love tax cuts, always.
Sure. Like you said. You'll take any kind of tax cut, but it needs to be more ambitious.
Yeah, but it's also to help take the wind out of the sails of the Liberty legislators who want grocery tax repeal. And the Democrats want it too, by the way, because it's a good policy. And what you're seeing right now is exactly what you said. Oh, this is record-breaking tax relief. They've never done this before. It's budget busting. This costs so much money.
The AP felt very good about it. I could tell from the article yesterday. The Associated Press was very on board with this. So that always raises a red flag for me. But all that aside.
Yeah, so we have a $1.9 billion surplus, and taxpayers ongoing are getting like $350 million. Oh, okay, cool, great, fantastic. One-time rebates of like $250 or whatever. Yeah, I might have those numbers backwards. I haven't slept much lately, but
but it's not a whole lot.
Yeah, but the point is, it's not a whole lot. Again, we'll take anything. But I want to. We did have. It was funny to watch in the House Revenue and Taxation Committee yesterday. They passed the bill out of committee, so it goes to the floor tomorrow morning. So if you care about this piece of legislation, you should reach out to your state lawmakers tomorrow and let them know your thoughts, or by tomorrow. I believe they go on the floor at 11 a.m. and this will be probably the only bill debated. It's the first one, and then it'll go over to the Senate. It's going to pass. But there's a very slight chance it could go to the amending order for changes where lawmakers could add in like grocery tax repeal or something like that. That's slight chance. Could happen. Yeah, I mean, as long as they're in session, it could happen. Is Scott Bedke and Mike Moyle, are they going to allow it to happen? No. But Tammy Nichols, a representative from Middleton, actually kind of agreed with Lauren Necochea, a like communist Democrat from the north end of Boise, and said, hey, nobody's really asking for income tax relief. They're asking for property tax relief, and they're asking for grocery tax repeal. So here's her clip. I want to just play this real quick. It's about 1:30, and she offers some good thoughts.
This is good.
Go ahead and support this motion at this time, but I just wanted to give a couple of thoughts in regards to it. I appreciate that this is one of the issues that we wanted to work on regarding our conservative agenda. So while it is not, I have to echo what the good lady just said, I've had 0 people ask me for this type of income tax reduction, but I have had many people ask me in regards to property tax and grocery tax reform and repeal. So I find that kind of interesting, but I'm hopeful, as the good gentleman to my right, that one, said that there is assertion that there is going to be room for more cuts in regards to, hopefully, property tax and grocery tax relief, because that is what we're hearing from people all across the state. While I've been sitting here, I've been getting multiple emails asking me to not vote for this motion, and that they are wanting property tax and or grocery tax relief. So while this I consider breadcrumbs as far as tax relief goes, breadcrumbs can still feed you a little bit. It is not total nourishment, but it does give you a little something. So I'll support this motion at this time, but I am going to reserve my right to change my mind on the floor when this comes up there. So thank you.
Okay, so I love when people coin nicknames for things. We could call this breadcrumb Brad's tax bill, because that's exactly what it is. Breadcrumb. That's a mouthful, by the way.
Breadcrumb Brad.
That's a lot. But she's
she's
exactly right. Nobody is asking again, and I have to say this because I don't want to be taken out of context by political hacks who will do that. Every tax cut is a good one.
Sure.
This one is not impressive, but it's something.
It's not terrific. But you heard Tammy Nichols say there that she's had constituents tell her not to vote for this. They're not impressed.
Yeah.
And they've been asking about property tax relief and grocery tax relief. They haven't brought up this income and corporate income tax relief. It's not even in the equation right now. Two things. She is holding out hope for more tax cuts. And I know she brought up the grocery, she's meaning grocery tax repeal and breadcrumbs. I think those are the two takeaways. And I think she hit the nail on the head, right?
Absolutely. It is breadcrumbs. And again, we get in our office, we get about 3 times a week, we get an email that says, hey, why can't Governor Little be like Ron DeSantis? Why can't he be ambitious and daring and bold? This was Governor Little's chance to be ambitious and daring and bold.
Right.
And with a $1.9 billion surplus, he could have come close to eliminating the income tax. He could have provided serious property tax relief. He could have done some combination with income tax or property tax or income tax and grocery tax. He could have done myriad things. Sales tax, that one's okay. Not the worst tax in the world, but
right.
And he didn't. Breadcrumb Brad is that's a fitting moniker for this piece of public policy.
Breadcrumb Brad. I can get used to it.
Unfortunately,
but like Tammy Nichols said, it's breadcrumbs. It will keep you from dying, but it's not exactly sustenance here. So it's just not impressive, not ambitious. And like you said, it'll probably be voted on tomorrow.
Yeah.
I think she's right to kind of hold out hope, like, hey, maybe we could get some more tax cuts talked about here. She mentioned something about that in the clip. What do you think?
So here's the inside baseball on this. 2 things. Number one, if you want to watch that debate, you can certainly do that. We're going to be broadcasting it live on our Facebook page at about 11 o'clock. So that's facebook.com/Idaho Freedom. And we'll try to put it up on YouTube and Twitter and stuff too. So join us for that, and you can watch the debate. My guess is there will be some, whether it's Ron Nate or Representative Nichols herself, who will attempt to send the bill to general orders so it can be where it can be amended in the House. So somebody could stick in a grocery tax repeal portion. That will be defeated, and then we'll have a full debate on it is what I think is going to happen. And then you'll see people like, again, Ron Nate, Carrie Hanks, Christy Zitto's not there anymore. Priscilla Giddings, they will go to bat for grocery tax repeal and point out that we've been waiting years for this policy. This is what people want, and this is what they're emailing it about. And yet leadership continues to lock down the legislative process.
Right.
And they'll get gavelled down by Scott Bedke a few times. But that's tomorrow here. Tomorrow's hearing is going to be absolutely wild.
It sounds like you've been through this a few times with discussion on tax reform and tax repeal.
There's some of my favorite debates. Like I pop some popcorn in the microwave at work and turn on the debate. And ultimate nerd status, I suppose. But
right.
it's
I'm good
fun
with
to
it.
watch these
It's fun to
debates and
watch.
watch people go back and forth and watch,
Right.
because you'll see a lot. The Democrats are going to oppose it because, number one, they obviously want to tax and spend. They want to keep rates higher than they need to be, so they can fund lots more government programs. So there's that. But they also, Ilana Rubel was talking on Twitter about grocery tax repeal. They're with us on grocery tax repeal.
Right. I mean, this is Ilana Rubel. She's a Democrat, and she's with us on grocery tax. The liberals and progressives I know personally, and I talk to, they've always been for it. So why are we talking about reaching across the aisle when it would actually get something accomplished?
There's actually a name for this. What you're going to see tomorrow, I think, is it's called the Wingtip Caucus, where the left wing and the right wing come together to oppose or at least speak against a piece of legislation. It's really fun to watch.
It's very rare, like when the swallows fly back from Capistrano, but it does happen.
I have no idea what that reference pertains to. I have no clue.
It's a joke about California. I lived there once for 18 months. It was enough for me.
See, I'm pure. I'm pure. I actually don't. I've never lived in California. I've only been there like 3 times. So,
yeah,
I'm pure. So.
Okay, you are pure.
Okay.
So we'll talk about California later. But what's the other question?
No, we will not. We will not talk about that. Getting back to your original question is there room for more tax relief? Absolutely. I know there have been discussions about property tax relief coming down. They wrote a really bad bill and rushed it through the process last year, and we'll see if they amend that or repeal that or change that. But people have been talking about that. And Steve Harris, the chairman of the House Revenue and Taxation Committee, has said that there may be room for more tax relief down the line in the session. Now, do I trust that? I'm not saying he's lying. But
based on your experience.
Based on my experience, they want to get this one out of the way so that they can move on, and they'll be supported by all the left-wing papers saying, hey, you've given enough tax relief. Now let's spend money on government programs. So
you're still standing by what you said last week. You think this is happening early on in the legislative session, so any attempt by Liberty legislators, conservative caucus, could just be thwarted with, well, we already gave you tax relief. So you still stand by that?
100%. In fact, I'll bet you somebody, whether it's Mike Moyle or Scott Bedke, somebody writes an editorial pointing that out at some point during the session.
Yep. All right.
Tax relief, and that's what we need to do.
You called it. We're going to timestamp this. So when someone does write that editorial, we'll say, Dustin told you so.
Absolutely. Told you so.
So let's talk about what's going to happen with the debate tomorrow over taxation. Let's go over briefly who you think will go to bat for us. Definitely Ron Nate.
In fact, he introduced House Bill, I want to say it was 448, 340. I don't remember. Check the legislative website, but he introduced a grocery tax repeal bill today as a personal bill. Now, for those who don't know the lingo or whatever, basically a personal bill is one you write yourself. You haven't gotten a chairman to buy in, which you shouldn't have to anyway. But leadership is going to take that bill and stick it in the House Ways and Means Committee, where it will die without a hearing and it will never, ever see the light of day. So Ron's going to be the guy to watch tomorrow if you love grocery tax. Priscilla Giddings, Carrie Hanks, Tony Wisniewski. Typically, he doesn't get up much and speak, but he might. And then of course, the Democrats, like I mentioned, Ilana Rubel, John McCrosty. You'll see... I guess John Gannon's in the Senate now. Lauren Necochea cannot stop talking about tax relief and giving her left-wing talking points about how this only helps the rich. I feel like we should create a bingo card for tomorrow. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll do one tonight.
I think you should.
Yeah, it's this only helps the rich would be like the center point, because it's like they're going to say it 400 times. It's ridiculous, but. So yeah, it's going to be a fascinating debate, and for those of you who can't join in, you can watch it later, or I'm going to cut out clips and share them on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, Rumble channel, Twitter, everywhere. So we have a special guest, Steph.
We do. I think we're right on time. It is Anna Miller, and she, of course, is with the Idaho Freedom Foundation. She is researcher extraordinaire. Hello, Anna Miller. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on. So Dustin and I have been talking about a couple of things. At first, nobody really... Let's talk about some of the research you do for the IFF so people could just get to know a little bit more about what you do. I want everyone to hear this.
Yeah, sure. So we recently started what we're calling the Center for American Education. It's a free market research center where we conduct data analysis of the education system, its performance. We write evaluations of policy, and we advocate for different solutions to try and have a more free market, innovative education ecosystem in Idaho and also across the country.
So, how long has the IFF been working on this? This has been a concept for a while.
Yeah, we've been working on getting this center together for a while. We've always done research, but we realized that we need, there's a big gap in Idaho where there's not one institute for anyone to go to get like hard data on the education system or
Right.
to really get in-depth research. And so that's why we wanted to really create a center to really focus on this.
So it focuses, I mean, it's the Center for American Education. So it focus a lot on Idaho. Have you gotten data from all the other states? What's happening with that?
Yeah, so we see Idaho as basically a laboratory to test out great ideas and to act as a model for other states to follow, particularly for other red states to follow. So we have evaluated, the higher education system in Idaho and the K-12 system, and particularly in higher education, a lot of our work is being expanded to other states. So just this last year, we conducted similar analysis that we did on higher education in Idaho, in Tennessee, in Maine, and North Carolina, partnering with other research institutes there. To advance similar policy solutions there. Well, I mean, of course, it's up to those particular states and legislators and the think tanks there to figure out, specifically what they want to advance. But, they see Idaho now as a model for red state higher education reform, and legislators
Right.
now have a reputation for living up to that in Idaho, and they're setting example for other states for how to achieve this. And so that's one thing our center could advance. We've done it in higher education. We want to start doing more in K-12 to, set Idaho up again as a model for things like school choice that other states can follow along with.
Right. Now, I know IFF really sticks by the money should follow the student as far as education policy goes. Let's talk, and that is for K through 12. With higher education, what's some of the reform that kind of leaves Idaho being looked at by these other states for education reform for higher education? What are some examples? Are we talking about last year's legislative session with House Bill 377?
Yeah, so Idaho has done several things on higher education reform that really set them apart from most other states. The first is the restriction of budgets. So that's a really strong tool that legislatures have. If a university is misusing public funds by promoting activism of critical theory or what we call critical social justice ideology, that is a reason to restrict use of funds because they're misusing taxpayer dollars. That's something that Idaho has done. That's something that now that national leaders in our country are calling to do. People like Chris Rufo are saying, defund higher education. This has become a tagline. They're saying, stop allowing public universities to misuse taxpayer dollars to promote pernicious ideologies that undermine our nation, undermine family life, and compromise American competitiveness.
Right. I think it's important that this be brought up because a lot of people don't realize people don't make the connotation so much that public universities are really taxpayer funded. So taxpayers also have a say in what's taught as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We subsidize higher education, public and private, actually extremely heavily. And of course, the logical place to start when it comes to higher education is public universities and to prove that you can reform them. But there's also ways that you could help private universities. There are certain grants and things that they get that are taxpayer funded that potentially could be restricted. We haven't seen that happen in a state yet, but it's something that could evolve in the future. But yeah, taxpayer subsidization of, promotion of a very political, anti-American ideology is not a healthy thing for our nation. And it's not good for universities that are supposed to be producing knowledge to be ideologically captured.
Right, not indoctrinating. Sure.
Anna, I want to jump in here. When you say ideologically captured, can you explain to folks what that means? I've read a ton of your writing, naturally, but what does that actually mean to folks?
Yeah, so universities are very unique institutions in that they're supposed to produce knowledge and they're supposed to pursue truth. That is actually the original purpose of the university, and it's the mission statement of most states' public university system that their state board or their board of trustees will set forth for them. That's the case in Idaho, is that they're supposed to protect academic freedom for the purposes of pursuing truth and producing knowledge. So it's very important if a university veers from that mission because the ideas that they produce, the knowledge that they produce affects society, it creeps out into society. So if universities instead have sort of discriminatory practices where they're only bringing faculty members in from one point of view, where they're policing speech and thought on campus through things like bias incident response teams, where they have many different diversity, equity, and inclusion bureaucracies all dedicated to policing student life, to policing the actions of faculty members, to making sure that everyone adheres to one ideology, well, that university is no longer pursuing truth and they're not producing knowledge. They're simply producing ideology. And that's what begins to subvert the culture outside of the university. And that's why we're seeing a woke culture in Idaho, in Boise, and all over the country, is because of this subversion that's happening in higher education.
Okay, so you've heard, I'm sure, a lot of examples. I mean, you've been working with other states, you've been talking with a lot of people about reform in higher education. Have you heard a lot of examples across Idaho of students who feel like their free speech is being suppressed, that they're not learning what they should be, or they're learning really, anti-American ideology at universities?
Yeah, so we hear, from a lot of students all the time that will, send us assignments or talk about what's happening with a particular professor. One way that we're really seeing this manifest in Idaho right now is pressure on faculty members. It's simply not okay for a faculty member at a university right now. It's not tolerated really much at the university for them to dissent from the reigning ideology. Let's just use Scott Yenner as an example, who has promoted family life relentlessly and has criticized feminism. And pretty much
Right.
every single member of his faculty department came out condemning him, of the political science department. And the university has protected academic freedom, and props to them. That's really important that they did come out protecting academic freedom. That is, I
Right.
can't overemphasize the importance of that. Good for them for doing that. But there were, rallies all over campus, against him simply because he criticized feminism. He's one of the only scholars left really in higher education nationally. There's very few of them that will even discuss family life, that will do research on that topic. So it just really shows the lack of diversity of thought and the pressure to conform, that you're not even allowed to the freedom to say what you believe or to say what you've been researching for the last decade without getting attacked and threatened to be canceled. But this does manifest for students through things like bias incident response teams, which both Boise State and University of Idaho have. And these teams basically investigate any speech that can be considered offensive by any student or faculty member, and intent does not matter in investigation of that speech.
Wow.
And anyone can report anyone for anything that they deem to be offensive. So they're basically investigating and policing hate speech. And the University of Idaho's bias incident response team actually partners with local Moscow police chief, which is extremely problematic because it suggests that their influence is spreading throughout the community.
Yeah, that's pretty scary. How long have these bias incident response teams been around? When did that become? I've heard it before. How long have they been around? When did this start to emerge in Idaho?
I'm not sure when it began in Idaho, when they first created them. My sense is that it's probably been around for, I don't know, maybe a decade. These have been popping up on campuses all over the country for a very long time. But they are very deeply embedded in the universities. They're a strong institution. They get a lot of funding. And they have very extensive rules for investigating students. The investigation itself can be considered a punishment. Students or faculty members can be expelled or fired for anything that the university deems to be offensive. And groups like FIRE have done investigations of bias incident response teams to show how, they may be violating free speech laws and things. And so if people are interested in learning, more about that or seeing an in-depth report, that is a good group to go to learn more about it.
Okay. So speaking of reports and incidents that you've heard, like the bias incident response team, I've heard a lot of buzz about a project you have coming up. This upcoming report talks about a lot of these issues. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so obviously we spent a lot of time evaluating the higher education system in Idaho, and now we have done the same thing in K through 12 education. So our report is called Critical Social Justice in Idaho K-12 Education. And it is really the first study of its kind where it evaluates the entire education system and how far critical social justice has penetrated that system and who is responsible for promoting it. So it's a very tall task. It's a difficult thing to measure because K-12 schools in particular lack a lot of transparency. They lack transparency and accountability far more than higher education does. I mean, just for example, it's difficult to find things on school websites. It's really difficult to file public records requests in K-12 because they will charge you an arm and a leg, and they will do everything they can not to release records. It's difficult to get information. So a lot of what you uncover, you rely on getting from parents, or taking the many hours it takes to file public records requests to get that information. Or maybe a school system just so happens to have a good website in their area, but that's more rare. So it's a tall task, but our report takes this on. And when people read it, they'll find that, like many other states across the country, the ideology of critical social justice is deeply embedded. It's written into the DNA of Idaho's education system. It's something that's a very tall task to remove. But the first step towards removing it is basically decentralizing control back to parents through things like school choice.
Okay. So the report's going to be a resource for parents as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's a resource for parents. It's a resource for lawmakers to equip them to understand what's really happening so that they can make sense of these radical events that they've seen. Are these just one-off incidents? Is there a reason behind them? Why are they happening? To what extent are these events happening? To what extent are they actually embedded in the system? And to what extent could your kid attend a school in Idaho and potentially escape them or not?
Right. And you're talking about, I find this intriguing, is the part where you're saying, and I know the report doesn't come out yet, and so you can't give a whole lot away, but you're talking about, to some extent, who's behind this ideology, who's promoting it. You were able to trace some of these incidents back to someone behind it.
Yes, and it's certainly, so we look at who is to blame, and it's certainly not one centralized authority. There's no one centralized authority that organized all of this, but it's many different layers of government, starting with the federal government and pushes through things like Common Core that ended up being things written in Common Core ended up being vehicles for critical social justice. And we explain that in our report. The State Department of Education, State Board of Education is responsible for infiltrating some of this. Governor Brad Little is responsible for it, as we'll explain in our report to some extent. So the legislature has tried really hard to set up good rules that sort of prevent the ideological subversion of Idaho, and it has worked to some extent, but it's very difficult to overcome the many leftist nonprofits that work with Idaho schools and affect the system in that way, and affect what school districts are doing, and affect what local governments are doing. So it's a very complex system. There's a lot of different people to blame. And since it is so complex, that is why the decentralization of control and authority back to parents is so important, because they are the real experts on their kids' educations.
Right. So last week, actually week before last, Brad Little gave a preview of his state of the state with the media. He said parents are in the driver's seat with their child's education in Idaho. After you've researched this report and these incidents extensively, I know what Dustin thinks about it. What do you think about that statement? Are parents in the driver's seat with their kids' education in Idaho?
If a state doesn't have school choice, and what that means is that the state still has a 100% complete monopoly on K-12 kids' educations. That means that majority of kids are stuck in schools that are run by the government. They're not run by parents. And there have even been school districts in Idaho, for example, Blaine County, whose superintendents have said things like, here's how you handle when parents have critiques for you. And we're going to make sure that we shield teachers from critiques of parents regarding the curriculum that's taught in these schools. And so parents absolutely are not in the driver's seat when it comes to educating their children in Idaho. We don't have school choice. And until we do have real school choice, and I'm not talking about giving parents $100 to go spend on curriculum, I'm talking about decentralizing education tax dollars to families so that they can choose the type of education and care that is best suited for their child and for their family values. And until that happens, then no, parents are not in the driver's seat. The government is still in the driver's seat of what their children will be taught.
Right. I really like that definition you gave of, essentially, here's how we actually put parents into the driver's seat. And it's a solid definition. I can't wait to read this entire report. How long is it? Are you allowed to tell us yet?
Sure. It's a long report. I don't know how long it will be in design. In a Word document, it's about 50 pages. It's long, but I think people can break it up into pieces and read the parts that are the most useful to them. It's meant to be extensive, it has an extremely long appendix in it for more people that are eager for more information. People that want, more baseline don't have to go into the appendix, so it can kind of be broken up into what people need and what they have an appetite for.
Well, this is exciting, and I think a lot of parents have an appetite with it for sure. We were talking about the parental rights bill that the Senate killed. Have we covered that yet, Dustin?
No.
Okay. As long as we have Anna here, do you think we have time for it? We'll talk about it a little
if
bit.
she's willing to chat about it, I'm
All
curious
right.
about her take. I'd love to hear it.
Okay, let's give everyone some background here. Parental rights bill, the Senate was killed. Senator Christy Zito was on the Halftime Report last night talking about this a little bit. Dustin, do you want to set it up for us? What happened with Christy Zito?
Oh my goodness. So I don't want to get into too much, but basically Senator Zito came up with this bill with Brandon Durst, who is running for superintendent of public instruction. He's a huge advocate for school choice and parental choice, and he has been for years. A lot of people don't know that, but he actually worked with Steve Thane back in 2010, 2011 to do some really cool, innovative stuff to change the system a bit, and it's been really cool to watch. But they put together it was kind of like see if I do this right. It was kind of a transparency bill, kind of allowing parents to have more say in classrooms and more being able to investigate a little bit more. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, it just gave parents a little bit more of a look into the classroom and a little bit more authority over, their kids' educations.
Right. Okay. So the bill was rejected by the Senate Education Committee, which is very rare. So in the Senate, it is tradition that if you are a senator, you're esteemed by your colleagues, and if you come up with a bill that's not ridiculous, you get your bill introduced. It may not receive a full hearing, but you'll get a bill introduced. And the Senate committee gave it a 45-minute print hearing, which is rare, and then killed it, which that was a slap in the face for Senator Zito, who is a statesman in the White House, or not the White House, goodness gracious, in the Capitol, and is really loved by the conservatives in the Republican Party. Huge slap in the face. And then there was an outburst where Brandon Durst went and said, "Hey, Senator Woodward from District 1, we're going to, this is going to cost you an election," which it absolutely could and probably will. And then there was an altercation, not a physical altercation, but the two kind of got in each other's faces.
An exchange.
Brandon and Senator Woodward. Anyway, it was a mess. ISB was involved. It was a mess. Not a great way to start off a legislative session, if I'm being honest. But I'm curious, Anna, is there any chance we see more parental rights bills? And what are the last question? Because I know you got to go. You're busy, but I guess it's a two-parter. Will we see more education choice bills or parental rights bills? And two, what are the huge obstacles that's stopping a state like Idaho from having the best education choice program in the entire country? Because I feel like we should.
Yeah, so absolutely, we will see more transparency in education and parental rights bills. Whether or not those will be welcomed by the Senate Education Committee or the House Education Committee is left to be determined. They absolutely should. It's a basic conservative push that's happening across the country in education policy, is to give parents transparency and a look into actually what's happening in their schools. Like, that's a very basic thing, is that parents should understand what's happening in their schools and have access to curriculum and all of these things. And there will absolutely be school choice bills coming through the legislature. There will be an education savings account that parents should look out for. And what was the other part of your question, Dustin?
What are the obstacles to having the best education choice program in the entire country?
The reason that we don't have a good education choice program in Idaho mainly is because of two things. Governor Brad Little, who is not truly in favor of school choice. Just because he sends microgrants out to families does not mean he's truly in favor of school choice. He has said openly that he is against vouchers. Okay, that means he's against you taking education tax dollars to a private school. Okay, that means he's against parents choosing the best education for their children. And then the second reason is the Senate Education Committee, not even necessarily the Senate floor. I actually think that it's really likely that a good school choice bill could pass the Senate floor, but the Senate Education Committee is very hostile to choice, which means they're very hostile to parents. And people need to start realizing this. If you don't choose choice and you don't choose equipping parents to make the best educational choices for their children, then you're siding with teachers' unions. You're not siding with parents. You're not siding with the best interests of students. And so it's really a very clear choice that needs to be made. But yeah, the Senate Education Committee and the governor are the two biggest hurdles for education choice in Idaho.
And the Senate remains the worst of everything always. Anna Miller, where can we find your research, your writing, your reports, and this report that's coming up next week?
So you can find it all at the Center for American Education on Idaho Freedom Foundation's website. We have a link right on our page for it. We have a lot of research, like I said, on higher education and K-12. So go check it out. And the research that's upcoming on the K-12 system will be out in the next 2 weeks. So just look for it on our website and our Facebook page. And if you're on our email list, that's another great way to get alerts about it.
All right. Looking forward to it. Thanks so much, Anna Miller.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well,
That was fun.
That was informative. I'm
She's
so
great.
looking forward to this report. She's terrific. I'm
she
just
is.
so excited to see this extensive report, 50 pages, appendix. I'm good with that. I'm for it. I'm ready to read. You know, you like to nerd out over watching arguments in the
Yeah.
Senate. I'm okay with reading research. I'm good.
Okay,
with that.
let's be clear. I don't watch arguments in the Senate because, again, the Senate. If you know the Capitol culture, there are two bodies that are very distinct. That the Senate is like they pretend to be statesmen
Right.
who are very long, very verbose, very high on themselves, if you will. And the House is like the redheaded stepchild, the super duper rowdy, just way.
Let's go, Brandon ties. You know,
Yeah.
the whole thing. Okay.
We'll see if that comes back. My guess is that it won't. But the House is where the fun is. If you want a good debate, you watch the House.
Gotcha.
And tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock ish, on the Idaho Freedom Foundation Facebook page, you'll be able to watch that debate. I think we never know. We kind of guess. But that the debate on the tax bill is going to be fantastic. So tune in. One more thing, Steph, if you have 2 more minutes.
Yeah, I got 2 more minutes. Go for it.
We're doing something super cool.
Yes, I'm going to let you introduce this because Dustin.
Super cool. So I'm really excited about this. I've wanted one of these for a long time, and I'm getting my own. But we got this really cool. Sorry, it's let me see if I can get this right. So this is a weightlifting belt, and I don't know, men, women weightlift, right? I mean,
yeah, everybody likes weightlifting.
Everybody, right? So this is a gas. I can't even get it right.
You got to just lift it up. I can see it. We're gonna have to do this in segments. This is a nice weightlifting belt. All right, Gadsden flag. Okay, but it's not. Gotcha.
There we go. Bump the mic and okay. So I should hold it up above my head like this. It's
Champion Dustin.
Gadsden flag weightlifting belt, and we are going to give this away to somebody in 2 weeks. We're going to give this away, and how you enter to win this thing, which is it's fantastic, just too small for me. Is you text the word Steph, your first name, not mine.
STEPH.
Yeah, it's there. It's down there on the bottom. Text Steph to 208-514-4480. That's Steph to 208-514-4480. You'll be automatically entered to win this wonderful, again, over the head so I don't bump the mic, wonderful Gadsden flag weightlifting belt. This thing's fantastic. I love it. High quality material, and it will definitely set you apart in the gym.
You really want one of those. I can
really
tell.
do. I'm actually going to order one right after we get off here. So text Steph to 208-514-4480. And not this Friday, but next Friday, we'll pick a winner. And of course, that adds you into the text group for IFF. So if you want to get our texts, we'll send out important votes, key information, exclusive briefings, and more swag. So
more swag.
Join that. It's going to be fantastic. So
that's awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to help you give that away. So exciting stuff. I'll be back on Friday at 7 p.m. to review what's happened, especially with the debate about this tax bill. We'll see how it goes. Looking forward to the debates tomorrow. With that, what time did you say approximately it should start?
Roughly 11 a.m. Mountain Time. There may be some business they need to conduct first, so it might be 11:15.
Are you sending out alerts at all?
We will. We'll send out text alerts if you're on our text group and Facebook page. It'll be live there and live on YouTube and probably Twitter and all the places where we broadcast. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And again, this is the purpose of this show, and what IFF does is to educate you so you can take action. If you have the time between now and then, call your lawmaker or email them and let them know. It's just say, hey, maybe this is kind of a wimpy idea. This is a really wimpy tax cut.
At least have your representatives. You could tell them that, and you want your representatives to get that on the record if that's how you feel. Yeah. So that's important. But I will definitely be watching tomorrow, and we will cover that on Friday. Find out what happens and where this tax cut bill is at. Thanks so much for joining on Steph Lucas Live. Dustin, thank you for navigating this. It's much appreciated. Awesome to have Anna Miller on. I always love talking to her. She's so great. Great researcher. Really terrific. All right. Thanks so much. We'll see you back here this Friday at 7 p.m. on Steph Lucas Live.